Right, staying in the US, a New York City jury has reached a verdict on 4 of the 5 counts against Segun Combs, the music mogul better known as Diddy. The jury decided on 2 counts of sex trafficking involving 2 of his long-term girlfriends, as well as 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. But on the most serious count, racketeering conspiracy, which means conducting the crimes in the form of an organised crime enterprise, the jurors said they had not yet reached a verdict. Deliberations will continue on Wednesday. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. OK, we can now talk to Segun Oduolowu, who's a freelance entertainment journalist in Los Angeles. It's great that you're here with us. What seems to have prevented the jury from agreeing on a verdict on all counts against Diddy?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And honestly, it was the racketeering being the most difficult of the charges with which to prove, because you have to show a record of illegal action or illegal practices that funds businesses were funding, and the sex trafficking, the prostitution, all of those proceeds used to pay for that came from the business. And I think the jury has struggled from the very beginning to see how this criminal enterprise manifested with the sexual proclivities of someone who might be a little bit deviant, but is no way a mob boss using these ill-gotten goods to pay for sex.
Now, it is this exact sort of context that attracts such big media attention in the United States. Can you explain to us a little bit what the discourse is in the US around this case?
Oh, well, it's Diddy. In the United States, since we don't have royalty, our celebrities become like European royalty. And for more than 30 plus years, Diddy has been at the helm of it. He has shaped the way Americans dress, the music that we listen to, what was cool. And he did this on a global scale. What you drank happened to be his vodka, Ciroc. If you were at his parties, you were in the in crowd. And he did this, as I said, all over the world. And people looked for from afar here in the United States for 30 years, watching this mogul put out hit records, hit parties. Stars wanted to be next to him. He rubbed shoulders with Donald Trump in the 90s. He had, the Kardashians at his party. So anyone who was everyone or everyone who was anyone wanted to be next to him. So this fall from grace is just fodder for our newspapers, our journalists, our TV shows, because it's on a scale of which we've never seen. I mean, he is in federal court fighting for his life, for his freedom, for actions that we find absolutely repugnant and repulsive: violence against women, sex trafficking, prostitution. But he made the music that we dance to. For a great many of us, he made the music that we grew up on. So this hits home in a way that few trials have.
How much does that impression and the sort of media circus and the discussions around it contribute to the difficulties of the jury in the case?
Well, that's a wonderful question. How does someone of this magnitude find a jury of his peers? It's impossible, right? The people that are on the jury are not music moguls. They're not Grammy award-winning artists. They're regular people. They range in age from about 30 to 70. There are 8 men, 4 women, and the jury wasn't sequestered. So can we believe that they went home after deliberation each day and weren't discussing the case with family or friends? Now, all of this has created such a circus, because how does a man who ran New York City for so long, he's from Harlem, get a fair trial in New York City by, again, people that grew up on his music? The media has questions. You're seeing people that are as repulsed by his actions. He has supporters at the courthouse as well. So it has just captured the imagination, and everyone is, making bets on whether or not he's going to be found innocent or guilty. What we know is that the racketeering charge is still out there for deliberation, but the other 4 counts have come in. We just don't know. The judge has not read what they are.
Yeah, and we'll have to follow this trial as it goes forward. Segun, thank you so much for joining us on DW.
My pleasure.
Right, let's get up to date on this now. We can talk to KJ Matthews in Los Angeles. KJ, it's great to see you. Can you tell us why couldn't the jury agree on the verdict on all counts against Diddy?
Well, going into this trial, it lasted for about 6 weeks. Many people had said from the very beginning, I think even some members of the prosecution team said that the hardest charge of all 5 counts would be the racketeering charge, or conspiracy. That is the toughest one, where they even said during testimony, and you heard the prosecution discussing the racketeering conspiracy count, there were literally members of the jury that rolled their eyes, is what we've been told. So that was always going to be the toughest count to prove to jurors. I think the other 4 counts, which were 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution. Well, we already heard from male prostitutes that testified during this case for over 6 weeks that they crossed state lines to participate in these freak-offs. So I think that charge of 2 counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution was a slam dunk for the prosecution. And I believe that those 2 were probably the first 2 counts that they made a decision on. Then you're left with 2 other counts of 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. And I do believe that all of the witnesses, I think there were more than 30 over the 6-week time, may have really leaned towards guilty perhaps on that count. So that leaves us with the 1 count of racketeering and conspiracy. And I'm sure, and what I've been hearing is that there's been a lot of tense arguments, disagreements among the jurors. And I think that's going to be the toughest charge, for them to all come to some unanimous decision as to saying that either Sean Diddy Combs is either completely guilty of the racketeering charge or not guilty. And so I think they needed a little bit more time on that. Remember, they have only been deliberating for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, and they're going to come back Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and see if they can go through and come up with a decision on that last count, that 5th count.
KJ, talk to us about what racketeering conspiracy is. What does this one specifically mean to those of us that don't understand the US legal system?
The tough part about that is that they have to admit or show that he somehow was running an illicit business for the purposes of his own pleasure, possibly that involved sex. The problem is Sean Diddy Combs owns a lot of different businesses. He had a clothing line, he had a music line, he was part owner in a cable company, he was in the wine and spirits company. You'll have to show that perhaps one of those companies or all of those companies were part of this illicit kind of business that he was running on the side, and he had all these people involved. That may be a little bit more difficult because Sean Diddy Combs did have legitimate businesses going on. The question is, did he use some of those legitimate businesses for illicit purposes? And that's the real thing that they have to kind of nail that down. If so, how and when? So it's a little bit tougher.
Very quickly, KJ, what happens next?
Now they're going to come back. And if they cannot come to a decision on this racketeering count and they're hopelessly deadlocked, then what we may just have is a mistrial on that count and only that count. But the other 4 counts that they've come to a decision with, we'll hear that. And then the prosecution has to decide, do you want to retry him on that 1 count that they couldn't come to a decision with, or are you okay with whatever the decision is on the other 4 counts? Remember, if he's found guilty on one of the other 4 counts that I mentioned, he still has a minimum of 15 years to be sentenced.
KJ.
And that's a long time for somebody that's 55 years old.
Thank you so much. Big media attention on this trial. We're really grateful to get your insights. KJ Matthews in Los Angeles, thanks so much.
Thank you.